Author's note. Like all of my other works that take place along the Nod-Wells timelines, The Spiral and the Threads is designed to function and stand alone as its own self-contained collection of stories. That said, there are several elements throughout the following text that could absolutely be considered significant spoilers for those not yet familiar with my previous releases. Thus, while I'm generally reluctant to suggest or endorse a particular reading order for these volumes, I would gently suggest that fans of more traditional, linear storytelling may prefer to experience at least some of my other books in the order of their publication before diving into this one. The Big Men, 309. Shards, The Nemesis Effect, Big Man Down, 500. Part 1. The Spiral. Chapter 1. Easy Money. John Posey sat in a bar a few blocks away from the tech company where he'd worked for the past 4 years, sipping a lager as he awaited the arrival of a former co-worker. In truth, Ed Collins was more than that. They'd worked together a few times since meeting in college, and while they didn't have much in common personally, John had pegged Ed early on as a smart, hard worker and a generally good egg who had a knack for getting shit done under difficult circumstances. In short, he respected the guy and considered him a friend. As a result, Posey had been more than a little dejected the previous year when Ed had told him he was leaving their company for a mysterious new gig he'd refused to talk about in any detail. In retrospect, John could admit that he might have been a bit jealous at the time, but he also knew that Ed was the sort of fellow who would eventually open the door for him if the new place turned out to be all it was cracked up to be. As such, he didn't hesitate when Collins called him out of the blue, asking to meet about an opportunity. Soon enough, Ed entered the bar and made his way over to John. At first, Posey didn't notice his arrival, being preoccupied while awaiting a refill from the bartender. Upon receiving it, he caught sight of Ed out of the corner of his eye and immediately turned to greet him, genuinely stunned by his appearance. Collins had always been a snappy dresser, particularly for a software engineer, but the dark suit he sported that day was worlds apart from anything John had seen him wear previously. "Damn, son," Posey said jokingly. "What's with the getup?" Ed hesitated, apparently puzzled by the question, but he quickly recovered, realizing why his friend had asked it. "Ah, yes. I guess it has been a while since we've seen each other in person." "Over a year," John confirmed. Collins nodded, then gestured to a table in an unoccupied corner of the room. "Why don't we have a seat and I'll fill you in?" Posey shrugged, content to chat at the bar but acquiesced, sensing that his friend desired more privacy. "Sure thing, lead on." He gestured toward the table with one hand, picking up his beer with the other, noting that Ed didn't order a drink for himself before leaving the bar. As a result, John concluded that whatever opportunity he'd come to pitch him, it must be fairly serious. As the two men seated themselves, a waitress immediately approached Ed. "What can I get you, sir?" "Red wine," Ed answered simply. "Cabernet?" she asked tentatively. "That will be fine," Ed said reassuringly, and the waitress nodded, immediately departing to retrieve his drink. John raised an eyebrow. "Sir, you don't hear that much anymore." "It's the suit," Ed said matter-of-factly. "I suppose," John admitted. "Still, I'd settle for being called Hun, or Buddy, way before putting one of those nooses around my neck." He pointed at the perfect dimple in Ed's dark blue tie to clarify his meaning. Ed shrugged. "You get used to it. Honestly, I feel kinda strange without it now." Posey shook his head doubtfully, but decided to change the subject. "So, what is it you wanted to talk about in person?"